All right, I think the gang is all here, so we'll get started. My name is Tammy Hayes, and I'm the manager of the Emissions and Control Strategies Unit here at Georgia EPD, and I would like to welcome you to the 2021 Emission Inventory webinar. Joining me today is Jing Wang, Maria Gunsi, Emily Phillips, and Zara Samid. This is my point source team, and we're going to be taking you through the presentation today. Next slide, thank you. So some of the training goals, we're going to look at the regulatory info and applicability of the emissions inventory. We'll look at some lessons learned from our previous year's emission inventory. We'll also look at the new features in Gecko for the 2021 emission inventory, which is this current year's emissions inventory. We'll also look at new requirements for fugitive release points. For CAERS, we'll review some HAPS guidance. We'll talk about what CAERS is, and then look at the certifier and preparer information that's required for CAERS. Then we'll do a walkthrough of how to either opt in or opt out through Gecko and CAERS this year. We'll also review our internal QA process, and then look at some additional resource information and some upcoming training opportunities. And then we'll take some questions at the end of the presentation. Okay, next slide. So we are required by federal law as well as state law to collect actual point source emissions data on an annual basis. So the federal law is the AERR rule, or the Air Emissions Reporting Requirements rule, and it mandates that states are required to report actual point source emissions data to EPA by December 31st. However, Georgia EPD requires participating facilities to report data by June 30th to give us time to QA the data and also contact facilities if we have any additional questions. Next slide. So who does this requirement apply to? All Part 70 major sources are subject to it, with exceptions including permitted but not constructed facilities, facilities that have federally enforceable permit limits, such as synthetic miners or major HAP sources, and also facilities who did not operate during the entire calendar year of the emissions inventory, which in our case for this year would be 2021. Since 2021 emission year is an annual year and not a triannual year, the annual thresholds are actually higher than the triannual thresholds. So that means less facilities are going to be required to report. To the right, you'll see the annual thresholds for this year. Please make a note that those thresholds are in PTE, or potential to emit. But when you are required to actually submit the emissions inventory, what you're reporting would be actual emissions for your facility. Next slide. So this year is a little bit different. We have our collection method consists of two steps. First, you go into Gecko and you update your facility and contact information. Gecko launched on February 1st, and there you can update facility and contact information, as well as update preparer and certifier contact information. If your facility opts out, there will be a form that you download in Gecko, and then you will proceed to CAERS, fill out that form, and then upload it to CAERS. If you are opting in and you have to submit, you would still put in your contact information and then proceed to CAERS as well. So the second step is going from Gecko to CAERS, and then in CAERS you can either opt in for your facility or opt out. CAERS launched on February 2nd. And new users can register in CDX, which is the website that CAERS is housed in. It's an EPA website. And then existing users can also update information if they need to. There'll be an opt-in, opt-out series of questions that you'll fill out for your facility, and then it'll let you know whether you are subject to submitting the annual emissions inventory for this year. If you are not and you can successfully opt out, you download that form and then you upload it onto the CAERS website, and then you're done. If you do have to opt in, then you will just proceed with your emissions inventory submittal. We'll go over that process in a little bit more detail, but this is just kind of a broad overview. Just a reminder, so the 2021 emissions inventory needs to be submitted to us, Georgia EPD, through CAERS by June 30th, 2022. And then with that, I'll turn it over to Jing Wang.
Yes, we're gonna review a lesson learned from 2020 EI. 2020 EI is a triennial cycle year. So for Georgia, we have almost 300 facilities submit emissions inventory. Really appreciate all the facilities for their effort to submit this 2020 EI. Of course, most of the facility has experienced some difficulty. So we do know CAERS EI is constantly evolving because CAERS EI is thriving to give more functionalities, abilities of facility and the state to improve the application. We do understand there's a lot of challenges for 2020 EI. Hopefully 2021 will have a better experience. So we just want to summarize some common issues here. One of the common issues we find out facilities sometimes have a personnel change on the update information need to be updated CAERS user information and EI contact at Gecko EI first. And then as a state reviewer, we will check your CAERS user information against your Gecko EI. So normally facility request the access from CAERS. We will check with our Gecko database to see that user has been registered at our Gecko EI. So this is the same thing, very important for 2021 EI. And also because triennial cycle, we have a lower threshold. So we do have a few facility was opt out, but then there was a mistake. So for 2021 EI, we create an opt out form to have a process, this opt out process smoothly. We will cover more in the later part of the training about opt out form. And also for 2020 EI, we do know a lot of facilities has not working on emissions inventory before has a mistake has happened. This year, EPA is gonna have another training regarding control path. I do suggest the facility join that training. And basically for control path, your facility need to have at least one controlled pollutant, and also for your control device need to be in your control path. When we do receive your emissions inventory submitted, and we will look at your emissions, especially those emissions through mass balance or engineering judgment. We do suggest the facility to submit your calculation spreadsheet to assist our QA your data so we can reproduce and review your data. Another thing is regarding your emission. If you ever have an emission increase or decrease more than 20%, we would suggest the facility to really give the reason why is the increase and decrease happened. We also appreciate 12 facilities submit their HAPS emission in 2020 EI. We submitted a HAPS emission. We also looking at your submission, but then most likely EPA will compare your HAPS emissions at CAERS with your TRI submission. Also, Georgia is considered HAPS pilot program. With that program, we hope to assist more facility to submit your HAPS emission. Next slide, please. So for 2020 EI, as most of the facility know, you'll probably be reached out for critical errors. One of the major critical error we encountered is operating status year. So for your facility, if the unit or process is operating, that status year would be your start year. But if your operating status changed from operating to temporarily shut down or permanent shutdown, that status year is referenced to your last emission inventory submission year.
As you know, your facility, if is operating even one day in the EI year, for that EI year, that unit or process should be considered operating. So for example, we are working on 2021 emissions inventory. You have a piece of equipment was operating until February. After February was shut down, but in 2021 emissions inventory year, this piece of equipment should be listed operating. And then the following EI year, you could be changed the status. As I mentioned before, control path must have at least one control device and one controlled pollutant. For every control device, must have one controlled pollutant. So this is will be added in the QA check also at the CAERS. When we receive your emissions inventory data, we do our internal QA check. One of the calculation methods, such as math balance and engineering judgment, we require facility to submit your calculation spreadsheet to assist us QA your emissions data. For 2020, we do have a lot of facility who has not done emissions inventory in past 2 years. There is a lot of difficulties on not familiar with CAERS. So a lot of facility request extension. We do understand that we will grant 1 week extension at a time, but we do expecting facility during that extension time to finish the submission or make the correction. If that extension cannot fulfill your task, you need more time, we definitely would help you to grant another extension. But if extension deadline is passed, compliance engineer would join the effort to help us to speed up the final submission. Okay, next thing is, so we're gonna talk briefly about what's new in 2020 Gecko EI application. So major differences for this year is CAERS user information still need to be updated in Gecko first. So we use that information to grant access for any request. We also this part of the information will become part of the QA also. So we want your CAERS user information in Gecko EI is consistent with your CAERS website. And also CAERS EI has created a opt-in, opt-out process for Georgia specifically. So for Georgia facility, if your facility is subject to opt-out, you need to go to Gecko EI first to download opt-out form and then fill in that form information and then log in CAERS to work on opt-in, opt-out participation questions. And then once you finish that question, this opt-out form need uploaded to CAERS, and then you will be eligible for certify the 2021 EI submission. Also CAERS EI this year for fugitive release point, there is a 2D and a 3D requirements, which is new, and we will cover more in the later part of this training. So this is a screenshot about what's new looks like for Gecko EI if you have not logged into Gecko EI yet. So now in the EI page, you will see 2 tabs. One is EI Home and one is Historical Data. And at the EI homepage, at the second point, you will be able to see the hyperlink facility information to give updates or send a request to us. And also at a hyperlink of a CAERS user, you can update your CAERS prepare certified information. And with all other contact information link, you can updating your EI contact. At the number 3 point, you will be able to see opt-out form you can click on the hyperlink, access, and then download that spreadsheet, and that will give you the file opt-out form as Excel file. So we have a screenshot here. You can see briefly what information is captured. So one thing is highlight parts. It's your drop-down list, and now all the part with asterisk is required data field. This is a new. We will cover a little bit more in the later part of the training. Tell you how to fill in this form. So basic 2020 Gecko EI flow is if you have a login, so you log into the Gecko first, and then you will see all your facilities associated with your email account, and then you can work on the facility which is subject to 2021 EI. Once you click that facility's AERS number or facility name, you will see all the applications applied for this facility, and emissions inventory will be one of them. So once you click on that, you can start working on 2021 EI. So at a Gecko, your only things you can do is you can look at your facility information. If there is anything you need to update, you can contact us. And also you need to look at your contact information, which is most important part. If you have any personnel change, we suggest you double check your prepare and certifier and the emission inventory contact information. This is crucial for us, so we all use that information to get in touch with your facility. And then if your facility could be subject to opt-out form is also at the EI homepage. And once you download that opt-out form, so at the bottom of the page, you can click CDX to link to CAERS website, and then you will be able to decide your EI participation at the CAERS. So this year, CAERS EI has customized for Georgia with opt-in, opt-out process. So when you log into your CDX CAERS program, you will see your facility. And then if you do not see your facility, that's okay. You can send a request to us, and then we will look at your user information against our Gecko database. If you registered in Gecko and then with the same name, same email account, we'll grant you access. And then as soon as you have access, you can click on begin and continue reporting for 2021 EI. As soon as you click on that, you will be able to see the questions regarding your operating status. So if you have operated in the year, if you are not operating for the year, so from January 1st to December 31st, you are eligible for opt-out. So then you need to uploading your opt-out form and then be able to certify your opt-out status. But if you are operating, the next question is, did the facility meet or surpass the PTE potential to emit emissions threshold? So 2021 EI is annual cycle. The threshold is much higher. So Tammy already mentioned that. So if you do meet the threshold, and then you just go ahead and proceed with your 2020 EI submission, just like you did in 2020. But if you are not meeting that threshold, you'll be able to opt out. But then on your opt-out form, you need to fill in what's your potential to emit for all those caps. And then we will check to see if that was correct. If it's correct, you will be finishing your 2021 submission with opt-out. But most facility, we're expecting the most probably about 100 to 150 facilities submitting 2021 EI. So additional feature, new feature in CAERS. As you know, CAERS is always improving. So there's a few highlights here. One is confidential business information disclaimer. So if you do have a CBI issue, please let our state know. And also, CAERS add a Georgia-specific announcement banner. Currently, this specific banner is saying Georgia 2021 EI is due on June 30th, 2020. And also, there's a new feature called Report Creation Log. So this is when you're creating 2021 EI, it will indicate what information has been removed or updated. For example, you might see your permanent shutdown unit or process or release point are removed from the past year's emissions report. So in your new report, those are not there anymore. And then EPA is constantly updating their emissions factor. So you may see your emission factor you had been used before has been updated. Therefore, your emissions are recalculated. And also, EPA is adding new quality check to ensure controlled pollutant is assigned for all control device. And fugitive release point have new 2D and 3D data requirements. This is also, you can see more detailed information in Appendix B in CAERS User Guide version 3. So CAERS User Guide also included submission checklists. I do suggest the facility to check on Appendix D to see this checklist would help you to submit 2021 EI. So next is Emily is gonna cover new requirements for fugitive release points.
Hi, thanks, Jing. So there are now 3 ways that you can report fugitive emissions. So the first one is fugitive area. This is the one that CAERS had before, with a coordinate point at the southwest corner of the fugitive footprint. This one requires you to report a height, length, width, and an angle of the fugitive release point. Next slide. Okay, and so the next way that you can now report is similar to the first one, but it replaces the length and the necessary angle with 2 different coordinates at the midpoint of the width instead to replace a length. And it still requires a height and width number to be input. And then the final way to report is a 3-dimensional fugitive release point, and this requires a coordinate at the center point of the emission footprint and still requires a height and width of release. So if you have any questions about how these work, Appendix B of the CAERS Guide 3.0 has a lot more information and goes more into detail on these. All right, so now we're going to talk about some HAPS guidance. So the hazardous air pollutants are currently not required to be submitted in Georgia, but we are encouraging facilities that have them to report voluntarily. And Georgia EPD is currently recommending that HAPS be required to DNR. So this year, in kind of preparation for that, we're forming a pilot program to provide more resources for facilities that want to voluntarily report. This would allow more in-depth training and help specifically from EPD, and would also allow facilities to have some input into how future implementation and guidance of any future rules would happen. HAPS reported to CAERS are also then pre-populated into the TRI, so it removes some of that double effort that would be needed to also report HAPS to TRI. So if your facility has any HAPS emissions and is interested in knowing more or interested in joining the program, you can send an email to emissions.inventory@dnr.ga.gov with the subject line HAPS pilot program. So HAPs in CAERS can be submitted just like any criteria air pollutants, just added to the process. You can search for the pollutant and then enter in all of the required related information. The most important thing to note when reporting HAPs is that the cap that they correspond to should also include that emissions. So HAPs and caps are kept completely separately. They're not combined at any point in the national inventory. So the total VOC should also include the VOC HAP emissions, and total PM any PMs should also include the corresponding HAP PMs. So one way we're going to make sure that as kind of a check is to make sure that the total VOC and the total PM10 for a facility are greater than any total HAPs or total VOC HAPs or total PM HAPs that are reported from that facility. And HAP emissions should match what is reported to TRI because this gets sent on to TRI. All right, so I'm going to pass it off to Zara to talk about the CAERS system.
Hi everyone, so we've been talking about CAERS, but what exactly is CAERS? So CAERS stands for the Combined Air Emission Reporting System. It's an application that allows state, local, or tribal authorities to report emissions. So this allows SLTs to meet specific air emission reporting requirements, as states have different requirements. It also allows annual or triennial reporting to meet the requirements of Air Emissions Reporting Requirements Rule. And as we mentioned earlier, facilities are also recommended to voluntarily report HAPs emissions so that it can pre-populate toxic release inventory. Even though TRI still has to be completed and certified through the TRI ME web, we are still encouraging facilities to submit their HAPs emissions in CAERS. So there are two main CARE user roles, a preparer and a certifier. A preparer can determine their participation through CAERS, and they can also prepare an emissions report for a facility. So this person can be a consultant or a staff person who works for the facility. There can be multiple preparers for a facility, so each preparer would have an individual account that's associated with the facility. And if you choose to submit HAPs data, this also includes the TRI preparer. A preparer can also be associated with more than one facility. This means that one preparer would have an individual account that's associated with several facilities. The roles of a preparer are not the same as a certifier, so they cannot authorize to certify on the opt-out status or submit the report on behalf of the facility. A certifier can also determine their EI participation through CAERS, and they can also prepare the emissions report. They are also authorized to certify the emissions report and the opting out status for emission inventory. There is only one certifier for a facility. However, a single certifier can have multiple facilities, so this would require one account that's associated with multiple facilities. A facility can also be a preparer. For this, you would only need one CAERS account. And once the facility has certified the report in CAERS, the total toxic air emissions are available for the TRI ME web. And it's important to note that this does not mean that the TRI has been verified. You would need to certify it through the TRI ME web, not CAERS. And Maria will go ahead and walk through the Gecko application.
All right. Thanks, Sarah. Let me get over to, right. So this is the sign-in page for Gecko. If you have an account, go ahead and sign in. And if you don't, click on the register button and get that started. This is what the returning users will see. This is the Gecko homepage. All your facilities will be listed here. In order to access anything within your facility, click on the name or the AERS number and make sure the emissions inventory box is checked. For new users, click on the request access to a facility to add your facility to this list. And the facility access request page looks like this. Add in the AERS number or the facility name as it appears in your most recent permit, and make sure to select emissions inventory if that's the only thing you want, or you can add any of the others. So once you click on your facility name or AERS number, you'll see the applications that you have access to. You'll see the name of the application on the left-hand side, and the right-hand side is the current status of the application and when it's due. You'll go ahead and click on Emissions Inventory to access the 2021 Emission Inventory application. Once you click on that, you'll see the Emissions Inventory homepage, as mentioned before. I'm going to go into detail of each of the sections within the homepage. As noted before, there are only 2 tabs this year. The historical data shows emission inventory data up to 2018. Anything else, 2019 to present, will be available in CAERS. So the most important thing, as we have mentioned, is the facility information and all your contact information. You'll click on those hyperlinks to get to the different updating sections. The facility information is actually at the bottom of the page if you scroll all the way down, but clicking on the hyperlink brings you to it. Make sure your facility name and address are correct. If not, please email us at emissions.inventory@dnr.ga.gov and update anything else that you're able to in this page. The next item to update and make sure it's correct is the CAERS users page. And just to note that if you only have one person handling all your emission inventory stuff, you can select the both option, and that's all you need. You only need one account. Once you have your user information added, this page is actually available to you at any time, but it's important to do this first when you start your emission inventory process. If you need to modify any of your current users, there's a control column where you can edit or delete or add additional preparers. And finally, there is an emission inventory like a primary contact. Just to kind of explain a possible scenario, some facilities have a primary contact, like that's your environmental manager. Then for the preparer, that could be your consultant, and then your certifier could be your plant manager. That's just an example. It could potentially be all the same person, or that's up to you. Finally, we're going to talk about the opt-out form. So this is the opt-out form. There are 2 tabs. The first tab is a README with all the information. It goes into detail where things are located. And the second tab is the form. The first 2 sections, you'll see a lot of highlighted cells. These are drop-down lists. Go ahead, the annual will already be checked, but for others you'll need to fill it in. You'll notice the annual PTE thresholds in the PTE table below. So this is like the most important portion along with the final section. You'll go ahead and add in your PTE emissions if you're operating. There are 2 types of emission justifications. There's the PTE that was calculated for your Title V application, your initial or your renewal, or it could be a requested permit limit. So the PTE should be the PTE emissions that were used to compile the permit that correlates to the emission calendar year. So for example, if you had a permit that came out in 2022, and there's a new permit condition listed there, you can't use that as a justification. The permit limit has to come from the corresponding year, from the permit that was that applies to the 2021 year. And if you were not around for the formation of your permit, we do have the permit and permit narratives all on the Georgia EPD website. Those links are in the opt-out form, along with, you can check out the initial or renew or Title V applications. There's like an old database, and then there's all the new permit applications that are available on GEOS. And we are asking for proof of these PTE calculations or a permit limit condition. You can add this to the second tab or a third tab actually, or an additional Excel file. You could do a screenshot and paste it in, or just write a list, for example, like VOC, check permit condition, whatever, and that'll be good. The final 3 questions, the first and second ask when you were, if you were temporarily shut down or permanently shut down, and again, you need to be shut down during the entirety of 2021 to be able to opt out, unless you're under the PTE, of course. And finally, if your facility is co-located with another facility, please go ahead and indicate that facility name and AERS number. This sometimes applies to facilities that do fall under the threshold by itself, but are combined, and that's why they have a Title V application. And now I'll talk a little bit more about CDX. So at the bottom of that, the Gecko EI homepage, you'll click on that, and it'll bring you to this page. Like we said, it was opened in February, and emails have already been sent out that it's been open. If you haven't received an email, please make sure to either register for Gecko and also to update your information there. So you go ahead and click in there. So CDX is just kind of like a landing page that contains all the different types of reporting systems. So CAERS is located here. I'm not going to go into detail on this part because EPA will go into further detail in subsequent trainings, which we'll mention later on in the presentation. But so I'm going to first talk about the opt-out. This is an example of opting out where the facility did operate and was under all the thresholds. So that's one scenario. The second scenario was if they're temporarily or permanently shut down all of 2021. Once you select your answers, there's a statement at the bottom of the page that repeats what you chose, and it goes into what you need to do in the next screen. And this is for the opt-out facilities. You'll go ahead and attach your opt-out form and any other proof of PTE documentation in Excel file form only, and you must attach that before you go ahead and certify. So here, this facility did not attach anything, so therefore the certify and submit to SLT is kind of muted out. For opting in, essentially answer the questions and go ahead and submit, and that will bring you to your emission inventory page. I'm now going to talk about some of the internal QA checks, just to kind of give you an idea of what we're looking for. So for opt-out facilities, we're reviewing all the forms and we're going to verify against our records the shutdown status and make sure the PTE calculation reference and permit condition references are correct. For opt-in facilities, we're going to make sure that the control units match against the permits. Again, not all controls need to be in CAERS. Like, for example, if they have not been built yet, we're just kind of making sure that everything has been included. That's actually an operation. And then the next the most important is the emissions data. We'll be focusing first on caps, facility-wide cap totals that are greater or equal to 100 tons per year. So if you have your facility-wide total of CO is 1,000 and your NOx is like 50, our team will be looking at CO first, and if we see like errors popping up, then we'll be like, oh, there are more mistakes. There possibly could be mistakes in other, but otherwise, if everything looks good, we'll move on. So just make sure to provide all the information that will help us check for correctness and reproducibility. And also, we'll be checking. We'll be looking at the facility-wide totals for the caps. If there's an increase or decrease of greater than 20% from the previous year, we're gonna look at the inventories, compare the 2 years, and sometimes we're able to actually tell. Like, we can, with the information that you provide, we can see that, yeah, maybe production increased or they use a different emission factor. But if we cannot tell, we'll most likely be reaching out to you. We will also check for stack test data. Some facilities use only, for example, US EPA emission factors. Sometimes those same facilities have stack tests available, but they just, didn't think about using those stack test data. So we're just trying to promote the most accurate data. So perhaps using stack tests will be in your interest, as it possibly lowers your emissions. EPA emission factors are conservative for the most part. Another check we'll be doing is comparing NOx and VOC emissions from the emission inventory against the NOx and VOC emissions that were turned in the emission statement. This only applies to select facilities. So you'll probably, if you apply, or if you are applicable to this emission statements, you should have received an email. So make sure, if you are participating in the emission statement, make sure these emissions match. And finally, if you do report HAPs, we'll be checking the HAPs emissions to see if they increased or decreased greater than 10%. And we'll do the same kind of check as we did for the caps. All right. And Tammy?
All right, thanks, Maria. So next slide. So here are some additional resources. So the Gecko application training, we have some more training located on our EPD website, and we also have the current CAERS user guide listed on our website. You can also access this user guide in CAERS by clicking on Help in the upper right-hand corner, and you can navigate to that. There's also additional CAERS training from past EPA CAERS training on their website, and the link is below. Next slide, please. So what's next? So EPA has training from March to April. You can register for this training on our Gecko website by navigating to the event registration space. Their first training that's coming up is March 23rd, and it's the user interface training. So actually using the website to input the data. And then on March 30th, they're having bulk upload template training, which is if you're using the template made for your facility to upload your emissions inventory information. And then finally, they have training specifically for control paths on April 13th. And you can register for all those events on our Gecko page. Georgia EPD is also having virtual live help sessions from April to June to help facilities that might need special attention or have precarious situations. And there'll be more to come on that. I think we usually do it. There's availability twice a week, I believe. But be sure to check in. We'll start letting you guys know when we start that process. We're also in the process of creating small little video clips that we can put on the EPD website for some of the routinely encountered problems or issues. And we're hoping that'll help also limit some of the questions that we receive. And then we'll be QAing the data for the emission inventory submittals that we receive. So you might get a call from us. We might reach out to you to either via email or a call to maybe clarify some information, or if there's some errors in the data that we found. Next slide, please. So thank you. I know that this was a little bit long, but we appreciate your time and effort. Your effort directly helps us maintain an accurate emissions inventory for the state of Georgia. So thank you for your patience and just working with us so that we can complete this common goal. And with that, we're going to open it up for questions. So please raise your hand or enter your questions in the chat if you have a question for us. But you can contact us via this email address, emissions.inventory@dnr.ga.gov. All right, thanks, guys.